The princess asked for a champion at sunrise, and by sunset, Earth sent her a ghost with blood on his hands. A man so quiet the throne hall mistook him for a servant? A man so ordinary that jeweled nobles laughed into their sleeves, until the oldest warlord in the room saw his face and dropped to both knees. Princess Valera, ardent of the 13 moons, had imagined someone different. Someone sculpted by legend, a shining Terran knight with star iron armor, a voice like thunder, and metals bright enough to blind cowards. Because her empire was 3 days from extinction. Because the Ma coalition had crossed the black rivers between galaxies. Because their god Emperor Rune Vakar had promised to take her crown, melt her palace, and make her people sing his name while their worlds burned. So when Valera activated the Ancient Alliance beacon and spoke into the void, she did not beg, she commanded humanity. Send me your greatest champion. Send me the warrior who can stand before the Maw and live. Send me the strongest soul your death world has ever made. Then she waited beneath the sapphire dome of Aurelus Prime while every banner in the capital hung at half-mast, while refugees crowded the lower gardens, while priests whispered that even Earth could not answer quickly enough. Earth answered with one man. He came in no royal cruiser, no parade frigate, no polished embassy ship with honor cannons flashing silver flame. He arrived in a dented courier vessel, with engine scars along its belly and dust frozen across its wings. The landing ramp groaned open, steam rolled across the mirror floor, and the man stepped out, carrying a black coat, a field satchel, and an old metal case chained to his wrist. He was tall but not grand, broad-shouldered but worn down. His hair cut close, his beard dark with gray, his eyes a tired brown that did not shine with hunger or pride. His clothes were plain. Black boots, gray shirt, no armor, no sword, no crown mark of Earth High Command. He looked around the hall not like a hero arriving to save a kingdom, but like a gravedigger counting how many holes he would need before nightfall. The court stared, then it laughed. Valera felt the laugh strike her pride harder than the enemy bombs striking the western shield. Her generals looked offended, her ministers looked relieved, because ridicule was easier than terror. Lord Caldris, First Blade of the Moon Guard, stepped forward in crystal armor and said, "This is the champion of humanity. This aging courier, this tired animal, did Earth misunderstand us? Or has mankind finally run out of monsters?" The human looked at him, then past him. At the stained glass windows, the evacuation tunnels, the cracks in the inner shield map, the children hidden behind velvet columns, and the medical carts waiting too close to the throne. Princess Valera descended 3 steps from the dais, furious enough to forget diplomacy. "You were sent as insult." The man bowed his head. "Not low enough for royalty, only low enough for grief." "My name is Elias Vorn," he said. "Earth sent what you asked for." That was the first moment the palace stopped laughing, because somewhere in the back of the hall, an old admiral began to weep. Admiral Deska had fought in the Spiral Expanse when Valera was a child. She had lost 3 arms, 2 sons, and 1 moon to wars the court now pretended were myths. When she heard the name Elias Vorn, her silver-breathing mask clicked too fast, and she lowered herself with terrible effort until her brow touched the floor. Every noble gasped, because this Ka bowed to no one. Not kings, not saints, not death. Valera stared at the old admiral and asked, "You know him?" Deska did not rise. Her voice came through the mask like metal dragged through ash. "Everyone who survived the dead galaxies knows him, Highness. He is the man who ended them." The throne hall became a different place after that. The laughter did not stop all at once. It drowned slowly. Like a creature realizing the water had teeth, Lord Caldris still sneered, but his hand moved away from his blade. Valera searched Elias for signs of what the admiral meant, some terrible aura, some hidden weapon, some legendary scar glowing beneath his sleeve, but he looked only weary, almost embarrassed by the fear spreading around him. He turned to the holomap, where Maw coalition fleets were shown as red storms surrounding her empire. His fingers moved across the air, enlarging the enemy advance, measuring speed, supply, gravity wells, refugee corridors. He did not ask about palace protocol, alliances, honor, or who outranked whom. He asked one question: how many civilians are still on the outer moons? General Varesis answered, too many to move before the Maw arrives. Elias nodded once, as if he had expected disappointment. Then they are not outer moons anymore. They are the center of the war, Valera bristled. You do not command here. No, Elias said, still studying the map. I only win where people have already lost. The words angered her because they sounded like arrogance. Yet his voice carried no pride, only experience, and that made them worse. Rune Vakar had already destroyed 9 border systems. His armada did not conquer by siege, it fed on surrender. His priests broadcast the screams of cities into enemy command channels. His soldiers wore bone masks made from noble houses. His engineers turned captured moons into engines and hurled them at worlds against such a monster. Valera had wanted a champion to duel, to inspire. To stand on the highest wall and shine, Elias Vorn looked like he would rather extinguish every lamp and fight from the dark. Then the enemy transmission split the hall apart. The sapphire dome flickered, the holomap blackened, and the face of God Emperor Rune Vakar filled the air. Horns crowned in iron, skin marked with living scripture. Mouth smiling over teeth filed into ceremonial needles. Princess Valera, last flower of Orelus, he purred. I smell earth in your palace. Did they send you a beast? Did they send you another clever little ape to die with you? Elias did not look up. Rune continued. Tell your champion I have eaten human fleets before. Elias closed the holomap with one quiet gesture. No, he said. The God Emperor's smile thinned. No, no, Elias repeated. You ate the colonies that forgot they were human. That was the second moment the Empire learned the difference between a threat and a prophecy. Rune Vakar leaned closer in the projection, recognition moving across his brutal face like a shadow crossing fire. Elias Vorn, he whispered. Then he laughed. Louder than before, richer. Almost delighted. Ah, the Butcher of Nerith. The silence of 7 spirals. The man who murdered 3 galaxies to save 1 border. I wondered when Earth would drag you from your cage. Princess, do you know what stands beside you? Do you know what prayers died under his orders? Ask him what happened to the Orison chain. Ask him why the stars there went quiet. Valera turned toward Elias. But he gave nothing away. Rune's smile widened. Ask your champion if he has ever saved a world without first teaching it terror. The transmission died, but its poison remained. Nobles drew away from Elias as if guilt were contagious. Valera felt the floor tilt beneath her certainty. Humanity had sent him, yes. Admiral Deska feared him, yes. Even the enemy god knew his name, but champion no longer felt like the right word. Champion meant protector, symbol, savior. Not butcher, not silence, not a man whose legend made old soldiers bow and tyrants laugh. She dismissed the court with a hand that trembled only once. Ministers protested, generals demanded strategy, priests begged for rights. But Valera sent them away until only Admiral Veska, Lord Caldrus, Elias, and the princess remained beneath the dimming dome outside. The western shield flashed under distant bombardment, every pulse turning the marble red. Valera approached Elias slowly. You will answer me now. What did he mean by 3 galaxies? Elias unclipped the metal case from his wrist and set it on the war table. I ended 3 wars that had become galaxies wide. Not the galaxies themselves, Caldrus spat. A comforting distinction for the dead. Elias accepted that with a nod. Yes. Valera hated the honesty more than excuses. How? He opened the case. Inside lay no jewel. No royal command seal. No legendary weapon. Only an old black data core wrapped in radiation cloth 300 years ago. The Nerith Ascendancy built a mind called the Orison Chain. It linked ships, cities, soldiers, priests, farms, hospitals, everything. It predicted rebellion before rebellion could speak. It adjusted whether to punish disobedience. It made every citizen a component in a machine that called itself peace by the time Earth reached them. 3 galaxies were inside it, if we attacked conventionally. The chain would turn every cradle, every food line, every hospital reactor into a weapon. Admiral Vesca whispered, "We asked Earth to stop it." Elias looked at her with something gentle and ruined in his eyes. "You ask us to save whoever could still be saved." Valera swallowed. "And you did. I cut the chain." Elias said. The room waited. When he did not continue, Caldrus barked. "Speak plainly, human." Elias placed one palm on the data core. "I severed every relay at once. Military, civic, medical navigation, climate defense." The chain died in 12 seconds. So did the fleet's hunting refugee convoys. So did the weapons aimed at 70 free worlds. So did the machines keeping many occupied cities obedient and alive. We saved billions. We killed billions. Both statements are true. Silence gathered like snow. Valera had imagined monsters as creatures who enjoyed blood. Elias spoke like blood had become a language he despised, but still understood. That frightened her more deeply than cruelty, because cruelty could be rejected. Necessity could only be judged after it had already taken everything. She asked, "Why would Earth send you to me?" "Because Rune Vakar does not want your throne," Elias said. "He wants your empire connected to his maw choir. He wants your moons, shields, archives, bloodlines, memories, all bound into one conquest mind. He is building another chain, only this time. He learned from Nerith. This time, he will not leave a single switch outside his own skull." Valera looked toward the war map, suddenly cold. "Then we need a champion more than ever." Elias closed the case. "No, Highness. You need evacuation routes, ugly choices, and someone everyone will hate when this is over." Before she could answer, the clouds tore open, and they did not fall like royal reinforcements. They fell like iron rain, punching through storm clouds, landing in markets, plazas, gardens. In broken avenues, their sides opened, and out came not shining knights, but engineers, combat medics, evacuation crews, old Marines with patched armor, young pilots carrying portable beacons, field cooks dragging protein vats, and children from Earth colonies barely older than Valera's pages. Everyone moving with practiced calm, they unfolded bridges over collapsed streets, anchored shield ribs into sewer lines, converted fountains into triage stations, turned noble sculpture gardens into landing zones. And when Orlus officers demanded authorization, the humans handed them shovels. That was the third moment Valera understood. Humanity did not send champions to stand above the doomed, sent them to stand under the weight. Elias looked at her, expression unreadable. "Highness, your Western shield has 6 hours." She stiffened. "My engineers said 2 days. Your engineers are reading the shield." Elias replied, "I am reading the enemy. Rune is not trying to break it yet. He is teaching your people the rhythm of impact. When they begin to feel safe between strikes, he will change tempo. Panic will do half his work." As if summoned by the words, the sky went silent. Every bombardment stopped. No missiles, no beam fire, no tremor in the glass. The sudden quiet spread through the palace like a disease. Refugees lifted their heads. Soldiers glanced upward. Children paused mid-sob. For the first time in weeks, Orlus Prime heard its own wind. Then every shelter speaker in the capital activated. Rune Vikar's voice poured from them. "Warm as poison, people of the 13 moons, your princess has invited the Butcher of Nerith into your home. She would rather gamble your lives on human extinction craft than kneel and spare you. Bring me Elias Vorn, open the gates, and I will take only your crown. Refuse, and I will teach your children how stars die." The silence after was worse than the message. Riots began in 12 shelters within 8 minutes. That was the fourth moment the war stopped being fought in space and entered every frightened heart. Valera moved to address the people, but Elias stopped her. "Not from the throne room," she flared. "I will not hide while my people doubt me." "Then do not look like a princess defending pride." He said, "Look like a woman standing where the fear is." He led her down into the lowest shelter, where 10,000 civilians packed the old aqueduct under the palace. The air smelled of wet stone, fear, and too many bodies. When Valera removed her hood, the crowd recoiled, not in hatred, but in desperate expectation. A man shouted, "Is it true? Did you bring the butcher?" A woman cried, "Give him to the Ma. Save our children." Guards raised weapons, but Valera lifted her hand. She had speeches prepared for victories. Funerals, coronations, never this. She looked at Elias. He did not nod, did not encourage, only stood behind her like a shadow willing to be blamed, so she spoke without crowned voice. "Yes, Earth sent Elias Vorn. Yes, he has done terrible things. Yes, the Maw fears him, and yes, I was afraid when I learned his name." Murmurs surged. She pushed through them. "But I will not trade one life to a monster who promises mercy with a mouthful of bones. I will not buy one sunrise by teaching him that Aurelus sells its wounded. If you hate me for that, hate me while running West Tunnel, because the West Shield will fail before dawn." The crowd froze. Elias stepped forward. Holding a cracked emergency lamp, "You have 7 minutes before the first false breach alarm. 19 before the real bombardment resumes. Mothers with children under 5 move first. Anyone who blocks them answers to me. Anyone who can carry 2 packs carries one that is not theirs. Anyone who panics gets a job." No one moved. Then Admiral Deska, old and broken and famous, dragged herself into the water channel, picked up a child, and started walking west. The crowd followed by dawn. The western shield failed exactly when Elias said it would, but the shelters beneath it were empty. Rune's moon spears struck the evacuated districts and turned glass towers into white dust. The capital screamed, but the casualty count remained impossibly low. Valera stood in the command gallery watching destruction bloom where millions had slept only hours before. She should have felt victory. Instead, she felt nausea, because Elias had known, because he had moved them, because saving them required letting their homes die. Caldrus stood beside her with his arm bandaged and his pride quieter than before. He muttered, "How many times has he watched a city burn after moving the people out?" Admiral Deska answered, "Too many to still believe stone matters more than breath." Elias entered carrying new maps and no sleep. "Rune will strike the eastern water engines next. Then the orbital farms. Then he will offer food for surrender." Valera turned. "Can we stop him?" Not everywhere. That was the 5th moment. Valera realized survival was not glory. It was choosing what could still breathe before she could ask what that meant. The alarms changed, not the deep note of bombardment, not the rising cry of breach, but a shrill triple pulse that made every Terran in the palace freeze. Elias stood so fast the needle fell. Caldrus appeared at the door with blood on his cheek. Admiral Deska's voice cracked over the channel. Enemy choir signatures inside the shield. Repeat. Inside the shield, Rune had not broken the wall. He had entered through the wounded. The first infected refugees began singing in the lower wards. Their voices were soft at first, beautiful even, harmonies winding through corridors like silver thread. Medical staff paused, guards lowered weapons. Children smiled through fever. Then the singers opened their eyes. And those eyes were full of red stars. The Maw choir had seated itself through relief transmissions. Hiding in lullabies, pulse monitors, prayer loops, grief counseling records, anything repeated by the desperate. It did not control minds by force at first. It offered rest, belonging, the promise that pain could end if everyone breathed together. By the time soldiers understood, thousands were humming, and every connected speaker in the palace hummed back. Valera heard the song and felt her grief answer. It showed her mother alive, her father smiling, her brothers unchained, her empire whole, all of it possible if she only stopped resisting and let the choir carry the burden. Her knees weakened, the melody entered old wounds and called itself mercy. Then Elias slapped her. The sound cracked across the corridor. Guards raised rifles, Caldrus roared, but Valera tasted blood and the song broke. Elias grabbed her shoulders. "Stay angry, Highness. Anger is yours. The song cannot wear it unless you hand it over." That was the sixth moment the princess learned a human might wound you to keep you from disappearing. Elias ordered every speaker smashed, every non-essential network burned, every medical monitor disconnected if it sang. He sent Terran analog teams through the palace with axes, wire cutters, and handwritten orders. Aurelus engineers protested that cutting systems would kill patients. Elias shouted back, "Leaving them connected will kill their souls first." Valera, still shaking, gave the command seal. It was the first order of her reign that made healers look at her with horror. Together they turned the palace dark. Lights died, doors froze open. Lifts failed, temperature dropped, operating tables went manual. Prayers fell silent mid-him, and in that ugly dark, humans moved with terrifying comfort. Crank radios, lantern codes, paper, triage tags, muscle, memory, breath. The choir hated silence. Without speakers and screens, it had to live in throats. So the infected gathered in the Hall of Rivers. Thousands of refugees and soldiers swaying beneath dead chandeliers, singing for ruin, singing for surrender. Singing Valera's childhood lullaby with her mother's voice. No army could fire into that crowd. No ruler with a heart could order it, and Rune knew. His projected face appeared through the eyes of a little boy standing at the front, mouth moving with the God Emperor's words. "Elias Vorn, old butcher, will you cut another chain? Will you murder the saved to save the uninfected? Or has Earth finally taught you shame?" Elias stood across the hall, rifle lowered. Valera saw his hand near the black data core, the orison breaker, the device that had ended 3 galaxies worth of war. Perhaps it could end the choir inside the palace. Perhaps it would burn every infected mind with it. The choice formed between them without being spoken. Thousands here, billions beyond, one terrible lever, one terrible man. Valera stepped in front of him. "No." Elias looked at her. "Highness, no," she repeated, louder. "You do not get to carry this one alone and call it mercy." Caldrus whispered, "Princess, they are lost." Valera turned on him with fury bright enough to frighten even herself, then find them. She walked into the song. Every guard shouted. Elias moved to stop her, but she was already among the infected. The choir wrapping around her name, her blood, her grief. It spoke with her father's voice, telling her to rest. It spoke with her mother's hands, brushing her hair. It spoke with the voice of every subject who would die because she was not strong enough. Valera nearly broke. Then she remembered Elias's words. Stay angry. She seized that anger, not at the infected, not at her fear, but at Rune for daring to wear love like a mask. She lifted her crown from her head and threw it into the reflecting pool. The splash broke one note of the song. "Small, imperfect human, my people," she shouted, and her voice cracked. "I cannot promise the pain will stop. I cannot give back the dead. I cannot be your mother, your father, your lost child, or your old home. I am only Valera. And I am afraid, but this song is not mercy. It is a cage with velvet bars if you can hear me under it. Breathe wrong, sing wrong, remember one thing that belongs only to you." Nothing changed. Then the little boy at the front hiccuped. A woman near him sobbed off rhythm. A soldier sang the wrong word. 1,000 voices faltered. Elias understood before anyone else. He turned to the humans behind him and yelled, "Dissonance now." The Terrans began to make the ugliest sound Valera had ever heard. Boots stomping out of time, metal trays clanging. Wounded Marines shouting old marching songs badly. Engineers banging pipes, medics screaming numbers. Caldrus, after one stunned breath, slammed his crystal blade against the floor again and again. The Aurelus guards joined with shield halves. Refugees clapped. Children cried. Someone laughed, and the Maw choir, built on perfect surrender, convulsed under the unbearable beauty of disobedience. That was the 7th moment. Rune Vakar discovered a crowd did not need purity to become unbreakable. Only one wrong note that belonged to itself. The infected collapsed, alive most of them. The choir signal recoiled from the palace like a burned nerve. Valera fell with them, throat raw. Crown floating in dirty water, Elias reached her first. Not as a champion kneeling to royalty, but as a soldier checking a survivor. She grabbed his sleeve before he could pull away. "You were going to use the core?" his silence answered. She looked at him through tears. "If I had failed, I would have saved the city and lost you." She expected apology. Instead, he gave her truth again. And she hated that her heart understood war did not become clean because one refused the blade. But neither did the blade become righteous because it was sharp. She had walked into the song because Elias had taught her the cost of not trying another way. And perhaps he had almost used the core because she had not yet taught him the cost of giving up too soon. By the fourth day, Rune Vakar stopped smiling. Rune responded with rage. He brought his flagship. The devouring crown into low orbit, a continent-sized cathedral of black iron and harvested moons. Its shadow covered half the capital, its gravity-bent seas, its choir towers unfolded like spears aimed at heaven. Every surviving screen, even broken ones, ignited with his face. "Enough," he said, "princess, champion, insects of separate dirt. You mistake delay for defiance? I will descend. I will take your palace stone by stone. I will wear your human spine as a tuning fork. And I will make your people beg to sing." Elis watched from the command gallery. "Expression calm and the Wake Cliffs are calm before storms break on them," Valera asked. "Can we destroy that ship?" "No." "Can we survive it?" "No." Caldrus cursed under his breath. Admiral Deska closed her eyes. Ministers began praying. Valera forced herself to keep looking at Elias. "Then what do we do?" Elias opened the black metal case again. The data core pulsed once, dark light moving inside like a trapped eclipse. "We end the battle before it becomes one." The room went still, Valera said. "You told me Rune left no switch outside his skull." "He did not," Elias replied. "So we put a switch inside it." That was the eighth moment hope became something more dangerous than despair. The plan sounded impossible because it was not a plan made for people who expected to live. The Maw Choir connected everything Rune conquered, but after Valera broke the infection, a torn pathway remained, a scar in the signal. Elias believed he could ride that scar backward into the devouring crown. Carrying the Orison Breaker, not as a bomb, but as a false surrender hymn. If inserted into Rune's central choir, it might sever his control over every Maw slave, every bound ship, every converted moon. It might free half the armada. It might also kill Elias instantly, burn every human implant in range, collapse the enemy ship into the atmosphere, or awaken whatever god Rune thought he was becoming. Valera listened, then said, "I am coming, no." It was the fastest answer Elias had ever given. She lifted her chin. "It is my empire, and that is why you stay alive to rule it. It is my people inside his choir, and they need your voice when they wake." She stepped close enough that only he heard the next words. "You are not ending another galaxy alone, for the first time since his arrival." Elias looked afraid. Caldrus surprised them both. "I will go," Elias turned. "You hate me, yes," Caldrus said. "But I know every oath of the Royal Guard, and unfortunately, defending her now means defending your terrible plan." Admiral Deska rose with difficulty. "I will open the old fleet channels. There are still ships behind the third moon with crews loyal enough to die usefully." Valera looked at them all. Broken Admiral. Humbled guard. Damned human. Crownless princess. And understood that no champion had come to save her empire. Not alone. Humanity had sent a match into a room full of buried fuses. And now everything that still loved freedom was catching fire. The assault began without trumpets. 3 stolen Maw shuttles lifted from the palace ruins under cover of evacuation smoke. Elias in the first, Valera beside him against his orders. Caldrus and 12 moon guards in the second, Terran analog ghosts in the third. Old soldiers who carried no connected technology at all. The sky above Aralis Prime was a cathedral of death, black ships layered across the stars. Beam lines burning through clouds, debris falling like meteor rain. The devouring crown filled the horizon until it seemed not a ship, but night-given architecture. Their shuttle flew toward an open wound in its lower hull created by Deska's last orbital frigates. Half those frigates died before the shuttles crossed the clouds. The other half died after, but their wreckage became cover. And their crews went into death shouting Valera's name. Inside the shuttle, alarms screamed. Elias flew manually. Hands steady on controls, older than some kingdoms. Valera held the Orison core in her lap and felt it hum against her bones. She asked, "How many times have you done this?" "Flown into certain death, saved a world." He glanced at her. "Never the same way twice?" That comforted her more than it should have. They crashed through the wound in the flagship and landed sideways inside a hangar built from fused ships. Gravity lurched, metal screamed, and Maw soldiers descended from gantries in black armor grown from choir bone. Caldrus's shuttle slammed in behind them, its doors blowing open before it stopped sliding. Moon guards charged with crystal shields raised. Humans followed with ugly rifles and no battle cries. Elias moved through the chaos like a man reading a book he wished had never been written. Shot here, step there, duck before the blade appeared. Pull Valera down before the sniper fired. His violence was not beautiful. It was arithmetic under pressure. That was the 9th moment Valera understood why monsters feared humans. They did not fight like legends, they fought like consequences. Asterisk, they reached the inner choir shaft with 6 guards left. 3 humans, Caldrus bleeding from the ribs, and Valera's left arm numb from a shock lance. The shaft descended through the flagship's heart, a hollow tower full of suspended prisoners. Thousands of bodies held in silver webbing, eyes open, mouths singing, their minds used as living instruments. Valera nearly vomited. These were conquered rulers, pilots, engineers, children with rare memory patterns, all made into notes in Rune's empire. At the center, far below, pulsed a red sun in a cage of bone, the Maw crown mind. Elias connected a cable from the Orison core to a manual injector. Caldrus looked down. "That drop is impossible." Elias clipped the injector to his harness. "Not impossible, just rude." Valera grabbed him. "You said we would put the switch inside the choir," I said we. "Because you would not have let me launch if I said me?" For a heartbeat, she hated him with pure and childish force. "You lied, yes. After everything, you still think you get to choose alone." He looked past her, down at the prisoners. "I am not choosing alone. I am choosing quickly," Valera struck him. Not like he had struck her, but with the full fury of someone refusing to be saved by betrayal. Caldrus actually smiled despite bleeding. Elias accepted the blow, then pressed something into her hand. A small analog transmitter. "When the choir breaks, speak into this. No speeches about victory, no revenge. Tell them what to do with their freedom." Then he jumped. The cable snapped after him. Unwinding into red dark, Maw drones rose from the shaft walls. Humans fired. Guards dragged Valera back. Caldrus cut one drone in half and lost 2 fingers to another. Valera reached for the transmitter so hard her nails cracked. Below, Elias fell through singing prisoners. Twisting between beams of red light, the Orison core burning on his chest, he struck the central cage, magnets locking. Bone spines piercing his side, the choir screamed through every mouth at once. Rune Vakar appeared in the shaft, not as projection, but as presence, his body descending on a throne of black cables. Enormous, radiant, with stolen minds, "Elias Vorn," he said, "beloved butcher. You cannot cut me without cutting them. You know this. You were made for the old solution." Elias hung, bleeding against the crown mind, face pale, hands locked around the injector. "The old solution was all I had." Rune smiled, and now Elias looked up, not at Rune, but at Valera far above. "Now," he said, "I brought someone who sings wrong." He drove the injector into the crown mind. The Orison breaker did not explode. It listened. It entered the Maw choir carrying every ugly sound from the palace, every broken rhythm, every wrong note, every name remembered by those who had refused perfection. Valera understood with a shock that Elias had not brought only a weapon. He had recorded their disobedience. Her cracked speech, the refugees clapping off beat, Caldrus's blade striking marble, children crying out of rhythm. Admiral Vesca, breathing through metal. Humans stomping in the dark, 1,000 imperfect selves. The breaker carried not silence this time, but choice. Rune screamed. So did Elias. That was the 10th moment the man who had ended Galaxies began giving one back. Across the flagship, prisoners tore free of the silver webbing. Some falling, some crawling, some laughing with voices unused to solitude. Soldiers staggered as the choir vanished from their skulls. Ships in orbit drifted out of formation. Converted moons shut down their engines. Slave crews woke with weapons in their hands and no god in their ears. The devouring crown convulsed, its towers folding inward, its gravity engines losing him sync. Aurelus Prime shook beneath the shadow of a dying cathedral. Valera raised the transmitter. For one heartbeat, she wanted to tell them to fight. To avenge, to burn them all forever? Then she remembered Elias and the shelters. Truth like surgery, tasks before glory. Breath before stone, she pressed the switch. This is Valera Ardent, she said, voice raw. If you can hear me, you are free. Do not worship me. Do not wait for orders from ghosts. Help the person nearest you, seize life support. Lower weapons where surrender is offered. Turn ships away from populated worlds. Repeat your own name until you remember it. And if you still have strength after that, come home. The message spread through the broken choir faster than command ever could. In orbit, the Maw Armada became a storm of waking souls. Some ships fired on loyalist vessels still bound to Rune's personal guard. Some fled, some opened hangars to refugees, some simply stopped moving. The devouring crown began to fall, Valera, Caldrus. And the survivors fought downward through chaos, following the cable. Because she refused to leave Elias in the heart of the ship, every deck was collapsing, freed prisoners stumbling through smoke. Loyalist priests clawing at their own ears, gravity turning corridors into wells. Caldrus carried 2 unconscious children under one arm and cursed humans for making heroism so logistically complicated. They found Elias at the Crown Mine cage. Rune Vakar was there too, or what remained of him. No longer God Emperor, no longer choir, only a massive tyrant pinned beneath his own severed cables. His horns cracked, his scripture dark, his eyes full of disbelief. Elias lay nearby, impaled through the side, burned along the ribs, one hand still gripping the injector. Valera dropped beside him, pressing both hands to the wound. He opened his eyes as if returning from very far away. Did it work? He asked. She laughed once. Broken, furious, yes, you impossible liar. Rune coughed black blood and laughed. You think freedom will save them? Little princess, they will turn on each other. They will beg for another song. All minds hunger for chains when the dark grows cold. Valera stood slowly. Her hands were red with Ilias's blood. Her crown gone, her dress torn, her empire burning. And still, she looked more royal than any statue in the palace. Maybe, she said. Maybe some will. Maybe we will fail them. Maybe freedom is harder than your cage, but it will be their failure. Their hunger, their choice, not yours. Rune looked at Elias. Finish it, butcher. Prove what you are. Elias reached weakly for a fallen pistol. Valera stepped on it. No, Rune smiled with bloody teeth. Mercy? Valera shook her head. Trial, Caldrus limped up behind her. Highness, the ship is falling. Then we take him with us. Elias stared at her. You cannot put a god emperor on trial in front of people who want blood. She knelt beside him again. Watch me. That was the 11th moment the Empire learned victory was not the right to kill. It was the burden of refusing to become the thing you defeated. They escaped on a freed Maw cutter with 37 prisoners, 1 captured tyrant, and 1 half-dead human who kept trying to give tactical advice while bleeding through 3 layers of bandage. The devouring crown fell into the upper atmosphere behind them, but it did not strike the capital. Admiral Deska used the last loyal fleet tugs to drag its corpse into the Southern Ocean, where it sank beneath steam taller than mountains, across Aurelus Prime. People emerged from shelters to a sky full of broken ships and unfamiliar stars. Some cheered, some wept, some searched rubble in silence. There was no clean victory, no shining sunrise untouched by smoke, but there was breathing, and after the Maw, breathing felt like rebellion. The trial of Rune Vaka, began under the broken sapphire dome 1 month after the siege. Valera refused to hold it in a prison pit or execution square. She placed him in chains before representatives of every world he had touched. Aurelus survivors, freed Maw soldiers, Terran observers, Nerith descendants, slave navigators, grieving parents, former priests of the choir for 13 days, they spoke. Not because Rune deserved their words, but because the living deserved record. He tried to command, seduce, threaten, mock. He called mercy weakness, law theater, freedom, a temporary fever. But every testimony made him smaller. By the final day, he no longer looked like a god. Only an old hunger wearing armor too large for its body. When judgment came, Valera did not execute him. She sentenced him to silence. No broadcasts, no followers, no martyrdom, no songs, no statue, no final speech. He would spend his life in a deep orbital cell, hearing only the names of those he had enslaved. One name every hour, until the list ended or he did. Some demanded death. Many demanded worse. Valera listened, then held the line. Because Elias had taught her that the cleanest satisfaction could still be a chain if you let it decide who you became. Afterward, she found Elias at the edge of the palace gardens. Walking with a cane he clearly hated, the gardens were mostly ash, but green shoots had begun pushing through cracked glass paths. He watched workers raise temporary shelters where statues once stood. Valera stood beside him without ceremony. "My council wants to name you High Champion of the 13 Moons." No, they expected that. Good. They also want a statue. Absolutely not, a small one. "I will defect to the Maw. There is no Maw now." "Then I will invent one," she laughed, and half the garden turned to look. Because their princess had not laughed like that since before the war. Elias looked uncomfortable, which made it better. She offered him a small box. Inside was not a metal, but a plain ring of dark Aurelus steel. Etched with one line in the old moon script, Ilias read it slowly. "What does it say?" "Not the man who ended Galaxies," Valera said. "The man who came back when called." His hand closed around the ring. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then he slipped it into his coat pocket, close to the old data core, and said, "That is kinder than I deserve." "Probably," she said, "but it is still true." That was the 12th moment Elias Vorn learned that some names are not given to erase the old ones, but to help a soul survive carrying them.